Hey there, this is part one of a four-part series on voting apportionment methods, doing calculations in Google Sheets. We're trying to build spreadsheets that you can reuse for problems over and over and over again quickly to save you these repeated calculations. If we're going to find this initial divisor and find this quotient portions over and over and over again, why not make a spreadsheet that does it automatically? I'm starting off with a blank spreadsheet that I just called data, and I added a sheet that I called template. You should start by copying the same things you see. We've got headers in A1 all the way down to E1 for the population block or the amount of people we want represented. A quota, which is essentially the average number of it's the calculated number of representatives we would need, sometimes with a decimal point there. And we always want to be within one of that quota. Next, we have our initial portion, which will have different ways of calculating that. And we'll use some scratch work on the right and figure out sort of where we're standing with our apportionment. I also plan to do some color coding and some steps along the way. So make sure that you've got everything in the exact same spots. And now we'll call this Hamilton's method. You could keep that template as well if you want to have those labels, just labels only. However, as I go through this series, I'll keep duplicating the work I've done because a lot of it will stay the same. And we will make all the changes we need to make for the differing methods. Starting with Hamilton's method, we'll really want some data to use for this example. I'm going to use this legislature where we've got 39 seats. And here are our data, copying and pasting right out of the homework. We see that we get some formatting along with it. That's okay. There is a way that you can paste with values only. Sometimes you get some weird results like they're all spread out or they're all in A1. I find that pasting from the homework, keeping the formatting is actually fine. But what I do is create this data page where then I can copy and paste again, just the numbers, and this time pasting values only. For some reason, that two-step process, it makes it work better. And this population block, we're going to always fill that in for step one. We'll paste those from our data. I'm going to color code all of that with this red color as well as this color coded step to the right. Then we can repeat this at the end with different data and see how things differ. Step one of Hamilton's method is actually to find a divisor that we can divide each population block by to get a quota, or essentially our target number of representatives for each block. To do that, we need to divvy them out. We need to find the total population and divide it by the number of representatives. So in H1, I'm going to find the sum, that's SUM, of all of column A, inputting an A:A to do that. You can do these inputs by clicking. I can just click the top. I do want to use that whole column because later when I paste, I might paste a place with 10 different blocks or more or fewer, so we want to keep that very general. It's also why I highlighted that whole thing. Now that will automatically calculate the total for different data that I input. However, the representatives is the next thing that I need to do every single time. I need to update that. I'm going to make that a yellow for step 2. And step 2 is to update my representatives. I'm going to type just update reps there. And for my specific problem, I have 39 seats in this state legislature for these different populations. And my divisor will just be divvying these out. I take the total in H1 divided by the representatives in H2. And I get here, I can label this reps, actually it's people per representative. So it's the number of people each representative will take the place of. In this case, about 28,231 if I were to round that. And then I will divide those out. So I'll take those population blocks, divide it and see how many of those groups of 28,000 I have, because that's how many representatives I need. It's a quota, it's a goal. We might think of it as maybe this is the minimum we need, or we might think that somewhere around this would be okay. And those different ways of thinking give you the different methods. This is going to calculate automatically by taking the population block, so equals A2, and dividing it by this divisor in H3. Now I just hit enter to accept it, and I'll want to fill it down next. So I'll select it again, and I'll notice that that bottom right corner has that dot that can be pulled, dragged down, or you can even double click it to fill it down. It detects a problem with what I did. The problem is, looking at the top here in my formula bar, equals A2 divided by H3. When I fill it down, those cell references move down. A2 becomes A3, A4, A5, and A6, which is good. Each of these population blocks should be separately calculated. However, over on the right side of my page, in H3, where I have my divisor, that one's not moving. I don't want to move that reference. I want it to stay put. So the dollar signs that it suggests will lock it in place. The dollar sign in front of the row number 3 prevents up-down movement. If I look through these, I will see the orange reference on the left is moving down. The purple one on the right is not. And so that dollar sign in front of the 3 is doing all the work there. The dollar sign in front of the H is not mattering in this instance because we're not shading, we're not filling left or right. That's something that it took me a long time to figure out. I like that they added that suggestion now. Our next step for Hamilton's method is to round down the quotas. This is the sort of the first approach, is why don't we just round them down and see where we're at. And then we'll add some back in to the ones that need it the most. That's kind of the methodology. To round down, we do equals, round down, all one word. The input will just be B2. We'll just look at that one right next to it, and we'll fill that down as suggested, or I can do it manually there. We'll see that those cell references do move like we want them to. And now we can calculate an initial apportionment total based on column C. So I will do equals sum C colon C to get that. That one's automatic. I'm too short. I wanted 39. I've got 37. Let's find that remaining number here in H5 by doing equals H2 minus H4. That difference is the number of remaining reps. So I need to add 2 back on. Here's where I'll do a recalculation. I may not need the final portion every time. That may be if it doesn't work the first time. We'll just see how it goes. And we may not need all of these steps down here either. So we'll just use what we need as we go. My recalculation will be to add 2 reps on. And I'll start with the one that has the biggest decimal portion. So if I look at my decimal portions of my quotas, I see that this first block was the closest one to going up to 6, because it had 0.6675. Since that was the closest one to going higher, we will increase that. So this recalculation is my step 3. Shading that in green here and here, I will add to the highest, we'll say add to quotas with highest decimal portions. I don't know if that makes sense to you. That sounds right in my head, but basically look at your quotients, start with the one that has the highest decimal portion, add 1 there. Now I've only got 1 more. I'll go to the next highest, which will be the 0.52588. So the 6 goes to, or the 5 goes to a 6 on that one. Others remain the same. And to double check this, this is where I'll do a new total. I don't need modified divisor for this one. So if you want to put NA for this Hamilton's method, that would be fine. My new total is the sum of this recalculated column and my remaining reps no, I don't want that auto suggest. My remaining reps is this initial number of representatives minus my new total. And we see that now we've got it where we need it. So I don't need this final portion for this method. I think that's something that I use in the later methods though. Now I'm all done with the problem, and I could do a similar problem as well. Here's a similar problem that involves volunteers for days of different attendance. We would obviously want more volunteers on Sunday than Wednesday, maybe about twice as much. This method will help us figure out these little bit more nuanced ones throughout the middle. You can start by copying and pasting this data. Start with just to the left of the day and end just to the right of the bottom right number. Go to your data, clear out what's there. You can highlight all of them with that box in the top right corner. Just hit backspace, paste what you've got, and all we need are these attendance numbers, which I'll copy and paste in values only. If you have extra rows, for example, let's say I have one additional number here, then you may need to fill down these this last row of these calculated ones. I guess these are just B and C. You can do that by highlighting those last two cells and do this drag in the bottom right corner. That would be if you had additional data. You may also have fewer data points where you need to clear some stuff out. Make whatever adjustments you need so that that bottom row lines up evenly. We don't need this calculation here. I'm clearing that out. The next thing we really need is to update for step 2 our number of representatives, which I'll find is 11 in that example that I'm looking at now. Now we get our quota and an automatic initial portion by rounding them all down. And we do our recalculation here by adding to the numbers with the highest decimal points. These are a lot higher, with 1.87 being the highest. That will go up to 2. And I had 3 remaining this time. I'll do it 3 times. So I'll also add to this day and this day, giving me 2 and 3 for those, and copying down the others as is. We end up with no reps remaining, and we've got good coverage. You can look, we have one person covering 2,200, which is quite a bit above that divisor. And if we divided out these 3 people, I think we'd be quite a bit below. And that shows you some of the issues with Hamilton's method. Make sure you read about the different paradoxes that can result, which is also why we have different methods. We didn't stick with Hamilton's method. We've got 3 more that we're going to look at, so check out those videos next.